Kevin, the Viking.
Trent the Wizard. Welcome everyone to this 6th episode of Tau of Glass podcast. And good to be here and good to see you again. It's always a pleasure.
Always indeed. Indeed. And I'm excited to be here. I'm really, really excited to continue on down the pathway of life, as we say.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, and I'll share with our audience. So Trent and I are each working from home today. And so we're in a different setting than the last 5 episodes, but here we are. So that's why Trent's camera is off. My mic might sound different today, but here we are, man. We're pressing on. We're gonna power through, as they say.
The show must go on.
That's right. Yeah, and I feel good about this. It's so, just a couple things, right? So none of this is scripted. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, you're like, hey, this is episode 6. What is this all about? Should I be listening to the other 5 episodes? What I can tell you is that Trent and I, we started doing this. We started having these conversations about spirituality and the universe and what it means for us in life and in business and in just in our family lives and friends and business partners and all of that. How does everything connect? And we started exploring that, and we were having so much fun riffing on that we started setting up regular calls just to meet and riff on the universe. And that's how this came to be. So it's not scripted. We don't rehearse. This is, and these
off the calls, cuff.
It's off the cuff, yes. And this is exactly what you're hearing on these podcast episodes is exactly what we were doing anyway, right? We were just meeting up, a couple of friends, the Viking and the Wizard, and spending some time together, just riffing on the universe, and then we decided to share with others. So that's how this all came to be, and so we've got a format that we follow, but it's not again, totally unscripted. We just we riff, and it's our enjoyment and enlightenment is authentic and in real time. So happy to share with everyone.
Yeah, as my yogi guru once said, he's like, I'm not teaching you anything. I'm just sharing my experience. We're just sharing here.
Wow, and that is an amazing lead-in for today's topic. So There's a couple of things that I want to dive into today. So one is, and this plays off of where we left off on the last episode, where we touched very briefly on genetic memory and remembering and that part of the human experience. And all that ties in with awareness. And so, one of the things we were talking about recently was just awareness in the universe is a very special thing. There's, you and I share this vision that everything has energy and vibration, and everything is interacting and everything is interconnected. And there's plenty of evidence now that we live in an electromagnetic universe, meaning everything is connected through electromagnetism. And this can be proven in science. It's not like a theory. There's scientific evidence to support that we live in an electromagnetic universe. And so, but there's a step between, a rock or a more advanced form, which would be like a tree, right? And something that is actually aware, or even an animal.
This is true. This is actually, this is a theory that actually St. Augustine from the Renaissance period put forth. It's called the hierarchy of souls. And one of the things that he said is that okay, so first, as consciousness, as awareness, we spend time going through all the different forms of rocks and crystals, right? And imagine what that looks like. Those are very long form periods of time, right? For a crystal to form, it takes a very long time. But once we've spent time in awareness in all those, we, so to speak, graduate to the level of plants. Now think about plants as opposed to rocks. there's a little bit difference of life form there, right? In the sense that plants can grow, they can reproduce. Like rocks form, but they don't reproduce. They don't, you know what I mean? There's no reproduction there. Whereas plants do, but they don't have a lot of mobility, right? They're fixed, kind of like rocks. Then once you've done all the plants and you've been and you've, you know, experienced all of that experience, so to speak, as those, you graduate to the level of animals. Now, animals have a little bit higher level of consciousness and awareness. They can move around. They follow instinct. You know what I mean? They can, you know, they try to feed themselves. They reproduce.
Yes.
Once you've been all of the animals, then he says that you know, you level up or you graduate to the level of human. Whereas humans have a different level of consciousness than animals, so to speak. We have choice. We have curiosity. You know what I mean? It's not just follow the instinct. It's, you know, we do things that are somewhat at times contrary to rationality and nature. You know what I mean? Just
Yes.
because of our ability to choose and our ability to think differently, question, so to speak. And
Mm.
then he says once you've spent enough time going through the iterations of human, and this kind of goes into like the thought of like past lifetimes and the, you know, reincarnation and things like that, where um he says that after, you know, so many lifetimes, what's the next level? Well, the next level is divinity. It's God. And that's, you know, kind of getting to the level of like Buddha, of Jesus, of, you know, these kind of ascended masters, so to speak, that we talk about, that a lot of religions, you know, revere. So that's very interesting in the sense of how we progress our awareness and our consciousness.
Yeah, there is a difference between awareness and like proactive measures versus just instinct, right? So like a
Mm,
plant can and does, and I've seen it and certain plants you can watch it in real time, that plants will follow the sun during the day,
mm.
right?
Yes,
A
yes.
flower will in the morning the petals are tightly bound and the flower itself is slumped. And the
Hmm.
sun comes up, the petals open. Like that plant, even though it's a very simple life form, doesn't technically have a brain. It knows when sunrise happens and it does
Hmm.
actually wake up. The plant literally wakes up and follows the sun through
It
the
recognizes
sky
light.
throughout the day. Yes. And it follows
Yep.
it and it captures it, turns it into food slash energy, which is
Mhm.
phenomenal. That alone is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, that even happens, or that a tree will, and I see this where I live all the time, where you can see where a tree broke off at one time, like during its young life, during a storm, it broke. And
Hmm.
then one single branch ended up becoming the new route for that tree growing up and spreading new
Flourishing.
branches to catch the light. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that that happens at all,
Hmm.
right?
It
And
is.
then
It
you
is.
get to us as both physical and spiritual beings where we have awareness. And awareness is another ball of wax all by itself. I mean, that's just weird. The fact
Yeah.
that you and I can contemplate each other and contemplate our surroundings and contemplate the universe, we are in essence the universe looking back, reflecting on itself. And that's amazing.
It is. It's wild. You know, the fact that we are synecdoches. Synecdoche is a term which means that the smallest part of something, like a molecule, is a complete whole of the larger part. So just like our cells, right, that make up our body, those cells are a complete makeup. They are in and of themselves a universe.
Yes.
And so it's just like smaller parts of the universe. And so it's really interesting how, you know, it's almost like like we are parts of the universe that are they're constantly learning, constantly experiencing, uh, shall you say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with earthing? I have only just learned about this within the last few weeks.
Yes, very familiar. Earthing is a very great way to like ground yourself. Like, they even say that like maybe you shouldn't wear shoes, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because you should touch the ground.
Well, yeah, and
Um,
yogis teach that. I mean, you don't go to yoga class wearing shoes normally. Like you're in
no,
typically in spiritual settings and settings where you're enriching your body both physically and spiritually simultaneously, like through the act of yoga or movement. You
hmm
typically don't wear shoes. And so, yeah, so
no.
please continue. I'm going to share with you an experiment that I just saw recently after I want to give you a chance to finish that thought around earthing, and then I'll share with you this experiment that was just run.
Well, so earthing is like really like touching the ground with your feet. And it's because, I mean, think about our senses, right? We have five natural senses. We have touch, we have sight, we have hearing, we have smell, and then so like you also think about the energetic pathways of our body, our hands and our feet. This is kind of comes back to reflexology. Reflexology is like there is a energetic map of our entire body on our hands and our feet, and that's the way that we touch the world. So we're getting energy as we touch the earth and we experience life and go through things that we actually that is energetically giving us information. And so it's an important part because the earth is where we live. It's where we experience this experience. And so being able to actually touch the earth, it helps you to ground you to the earth, which is connected with the sun, with the universe, with everything. So it's a way of connecting, um, in a very subtle way. But to that point, as far as yoga and shoes, um, when I was in India and I was going through my yoga teacher training, our teacher was very, very adamant about our awareness of when we take our shoes off and go into the yoga shala, the yoga room, that we arrange them. You don't just kick your shoes off and just flip them anywhere. You set them appropriately in line. I mean, there was times where she would literally like before class go outside, get everybody to come out there and be like, look at your shoes. Everybody's shoes were kind of all over the place. She's like, that is not awareness. Awareness is knowing and being very conscious about how you're taking those off and the intention that you're bringing into the room, the intention that you're bringing into yourself. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. And we're going to come back to that in a second because
yeah.
there's another part of this exploration that I want to cover today. But before we go there, so I want to share with you, I just recently saw a study. So there was a scientific study on the health implications of earthing. And so this one medical doctor um, put sensors on people and looked at their blood. He did like blood analysis before and after earthing. And for the first time, there was a study, like an actual scientific study done to show the effects of earthing.
Mm-hmm.
And this includes brainwave patterns. So yeah, it's EEG, it's EKG, and what this
Mm-hmm.
doctor found was that when you take the step of taking your shoes off, going barefoot, and setting foot on some unobstructed dirt, right? Or a lawn, like a lawn, you're on your lawn or you're on, um, any kind of grassy area or turf
Yeah.
or dirt or sand, like you're on the beach. I mean, the beach, this kind of makes sense that why people feel a connection with nature, with the universe when they're on a beach, right? Like
Yes.
he was able to show scientifically that when you set foot barefoot, bare skin on earth, like not through pavement or whatever else, right? That when
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
set skin on earth, remarkable things happen instantly. Like your cells align in a different way in your veins, and your blood is pumping differently, and your brain waves are different the moment you touch skin to earth.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason, again, getting back to the electromagnetic universe piece, it just makes sense that the earth has a magnetic field. It
Yes.
has a core that's spinning and creating this energy. Um, and so all of these, and we're being pulled by the sun and the moon and the other planets. It's kind
Yes.
of funny because astrology, and I don't want to go down the astrology road today, but
Right.
astrology is widely considered as kind of pseudoscience. Like, well, like why would your life be different because a planet or a star, or a constellation is in the sky when you're born? But in fact, there might be a lot more truth to that than anybody imagines, and we may be able to prove that scientifically, because if you're running on the premise that everything is connected through this electric magnetism, then when you touch skin to earth, you are suddenly aligned with that energy. I mean, in a very
Mm-hmm.
real physical sense, and it's a measurable sense. It's not,
Yes.
it's not, metaphysics. It is physics. You touch skin to earth,
Actual.
and all of a sudden, your cells realign, and your heart
Yes.
is different, your mind is different, your internal electric impulses in your body and everything that runs your body is different.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's just phenomenal. I mean, for me, that's an awakening, right? It's a cool
For me,
spiritual thing that I've discovered.
that literally just makes sense to me, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like, not to go down the astrology route, but I mean the fact that like you were born, and this is, I kind of go back to like music and harmonics. I really think that's a
Yes.
really great analogy for people to like understand the way that this works. But it's like when like you were born, the arrangement of those planets, whether you're a Pisces, whether you're a Scorpio, whether you're a Leo or a Sagittarius, whatever that sign may be, there's a certain energy of that time period,
Yes.
of that season, shall we say? Just like
Yes.
winter, summer, spring, you know, that is relevant, and I think
Yes.
that science is now just kind of catching up, to what we talked about. And what's interesting is we actually, when our daughter was born, we did a harmonized name for her, meaning, there is a philosophy. It's called Kabbalarian philosophy. They're out of Canada, but it is something that I discovered in my early 20s. About 20 years ago. That's kind of weird to say, but now that I think about it, because it seems like yesterday. But um, it's this thing of where, what's the importance of your name. We like talk about the motion of movement and things like that, and like the importance of that. So when you speak things, you're literally casting a spell, as Bruce Lee said. It's the reason that they call it spelling, because when you speak words physically, you're literally casting an energetic spell. And so the importance of speaking positively, or having, some sort of energetic vibration in the way that you communicate, is important. And so when our daughter was born, we did a mathematically harmonized name to her birth date. So it uses numerology, it uses a little bit of Kabbalah, and then you're also dealing with, the seasonal energetic changes that happen throughout the year. And the whole reason for that was to, when someone calls her name, because it's energetically harmonized to her birthday, she's going to have less distortion, or, discord, throughout her life because of that name. Now, it was a name that we chose. I mean, there's several names that we could have chosen from. There was a list that, we got, that were all harmonized, but the spellings are always, interesting. I actually went through this process, like I said, back in my early 20s, and one of my names was George Zeviar, that I could choose, but George was spelled Jorj,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because of uh, again, the energetic harmonic transfer of that whole thing. So, which I think is interesting because that kind of leads us into the motion of things, right? Everything in being in
Yes.
motion. So
Yeah, and we
con-
may take one full episode just to talk about music and harmonics. I my degree is in music, and music theory is fascinating, and you can go pretty deep on that. And there is a direct correlation in the universe. Like there's a predictable nature of the size and spacing between planets and the vibration or the frequency that they're
Mhm.
putting off. Like it's our solar system is a scale. It's
It
predictable,
is. It is.
which is fascinating.
There's even a philosopher, his name is escaping right now, but he even had something that was called the harmony of the spheres, which is basically
Yes.
talking about, yeah, the
Yeah, that's a
harmony of
very real
the
thing.
planets. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and even the asteroid belt is like it is in a predictable spot. So that lends credence to the theory that it used to be a planet that was somehow destroyed, and that's why there's an asteroid belt. It's in a
Yes.
predictable spacing between the planets, and we know what the note would be on a scale if it were assembled.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
It's
but yeah, rabbit hole for another day.
yeah.
I want to get back to a couple things. So one is I do want to explore a little bit deeper on some very specific words and how we use them and what they mean. Before we
Mm,
go there, though, something flashed in my head, which was, in this exploration of awareness and how and what it means for us, like for our listeners, like how do you translate that into your life, and like what does it mean for you? Part of it
yeah.
for me is it's about being graceful. And
Mm,
there's a difference between just taking action and being graceful, right? So, and
yes.
there is a correlation there with awareness. So, as conscious physical and spiritual beings, we as humans have an awareness that most other things on the planet do not have, right? So, if you think
Yeah.
of like a deer is living, and it has awareness of its surroundings and it has instinct, but it's not quite to the level of contemplating its place in time and space. Like it's not
Right.
thinking,
It's not
oh, like
sitting there thinking
yeah,
like this tree that I'm eating, like what does that mean for me?
right,
It's following that instinct, right? Like
yes,
it's just munching away, right?
yes. And a deer in Lake Tahoe is not really that different from a deer in Utah. Like one doesn't know that it's in a different environment. Like the one in Tahoe doesn't think, oh, I'm in Lake Tahoe. Like and the one in
Mm,
Utah doesn't think, oh, I'm in Utah. Right? They're just
yeah.
deer going about their business. But there's something, it strikes me that there's something very cool and graceful about a being like that, because it doesn't wake up in the morning thinking, all right, today I'm going to meet with this other deer. And then we're going to go to that one field because last time we went to that field, there were these flowers that were blooming and they taste really good. And they're going to, it's nutrition for my family. And if I go there, then my family's going to follow me and they will also eat the flowers. Like they don't need to go through this stop. They're not setting task lists, right? They're
No,
not, they're not
no,
calendaring things.
no,
They're just like,
they're not. They're
show
not.
up and they just be. They always
Yeah.
are, and they don't have to contemplate those things. So there's a funny dichotomy there where, as conscious beings aware of our place in space and time, and reflecting on the nature of the universe, we start putting restrictions and barriers, and we create our own construct that makes up our individual reality,
But
and
what
it
is
and it's not
interesting,
always graceful. So I'm going to
it,
pause there and
right.
let you rip on
Well,
that.
and like what's like really interesting about that is that it is environment driven, right? Like you said, like those deer that are in Utah as opposed to the deer that are in, Tahoe, the same thing, like humans that are, in South America or Africa or Europe, their environment is what creates those constructs, what we have societally created for ourselves. Do you know what I mean? um Kind of determines like how that operation works, how we go about determining what those things are that we're going to be doing. But realizing that that can change, that's the most important thing, is that we can question as human consciousness and awareness. We can question that, and we can make a choice to do differently, right? Like I can choose to, you know what, I love beach life, so I'm going to move to Costa Rica or Lisbon, you know what I mean, or somewhere, you know, near the ocean, because I just feel better there. You know, it's not this, it's not this limited, just instinctual
Right.
type awareness. It's very, very, you know, thought driven in the sense of consciousness. It's like
Yeah,
we
we
said, it's
have
a higher
more
level.
choice, or we exhibit
Yes,
more choice than most creatures.
yes. So
Yeah. And getting back to the gracefulness piece, like that's something that like I'm contemplating that a lot more in my life. Like how do I just gracefully go through my life instead of like trying to force something or make something happen. You can like we you and I have talked a lot about manifestation. Manifestation
mm,
can be in harmony with a normal pattern or normal rhythm of the universe or your surroundings or the people that you're with or whatever, right? It doesn't have to be like you can make conscious decisions about what you want to do next and do that in harmony with your surroundings. And I think that's an actual challenge for people. I think it's hard for
it
people
is.
to do that.
It is. I mean, this is, you know, something that you're very aware of, but like for like the listeners, like I recently went through a breakup in my business, and my partner, I mean, things were very, and talking about grace in the sense of when like we talk about grace, we talk about like the fluidity of movement, right? Like when someone's like, "Oh, that was so graceful," because it was like so smooth and it looked like so easy and easily done. Um, but it also it doesn't come without practice. Grace comes with practice, and it's also comes with allowing that to happen. Do you know what I mean? You you have to be open to grace, and like being that kind of practiced type of, I'm struggling with the words here, but like, you know, it's like in sports or something like of that nature. I think of like grace, like a figure skater, for example. Like there's the clunky ones, and then there's the super graceful ones that are just,
Hmm.
it's almost like easeful for them. But
Yes.
that comes with the consistency of practice.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah, you acquire a skill and then it
yes.
becomes natural to have that skill.
And I think when it comes to grace within relationships, it's understanding your own ego, it's understanding your own natural, you know, predilections of like, I am going to like, I respond this way to this situation. But being able to change the way that you respond to a situation takes a lot of practice, you know, and like this is something that like I experienced recently within, you know, when I just recently left my own company that I founded a couple of years ago. And my partner was very, you know, he just wanted to go in a different direction as far as the way that he wanted to take the business, and like what we were doing within it. Um, we were doing, you know, basically consulting and print and manufacturing and things like that. And then he wanted to start a distribution company. And I realized to myself that this isn't, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to distribute products. I don't, that's just not something that I really calls to me. And so when I decided to leave, he got really upset. He got really upset. And it was one of those things where I could have responded in such a way of, you know, finger pointing and blaming and saying, well, you did this, and this is why things are the way they are, because he's pointing the finger at me and he was saying, very abrasive things. But I realized I'm just like, look, I understand that he's upset. And so literally all that I said to him at like the final moment was, I'm really sorry that you feel that way. And I wish you the best. And that was the end of everything. I mean, that was a few weeks ago. But it was this moment of like, I could say all of these things. I could respond and I could like let my emotions take over. However, what is that going to get me? How far is that going to take me? It's not going to do anything. It's not going to be constructive. It's going to be a destructive conversation because we're going to get into this massive argument, which I don't want to get into. And so,
Yeah, it's
trying to
not necessarily productive either.
no. And so to that point, it's like, I'm sorry and good luck.
Yes.
And trying to just exit with grace, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. You know what I mean? In the sense of like, I'm grateful for the time that we had together, but at the same time, I'm not gonna get nasty and like weird in the sense of letting my ego take over and do things, but you just good luck. And I will go and figure out the next thing for myself. I think that
Yes.
that's when like we talk about grace, it really is about understanding like yourself and your true emotions, where you're at, what's happening in that moment, and being realistic, being accountable, and being responsible for your current position of where you're at.
Yeah, and I would add to that being reflective, reflecting on
Yes.
your place in that relationship and
Yes.
your place in time. And I think a
Agreed.
lot of those skills, to your point, gracefulness is an acquired skill. And it may just make sense to me that things like yoga and Tai Chi and mindfulness and deep breathing exercises and for a lot of people, their religion, their spirituality, all those are the skills, or that's how you acquire those skills to be reflective and
The
contemplative and
the
graceful.
practice of those skills. Yeah.
Yes.
Very much. That's how you practice those skills, whatever your modality or methodology may be, whether it's religion, whether it's yoga, deep breathing, Tai
Earthing.
Chi,
Apparently, earthing
earthing,
is going to be on my list
earthing.
now.
Yeah. All of those things are going to help you to practice that grace and come into that skill, just like anything else. I mean, if I'm going to be a pickleballer, well, that means that I need to play pickleball a lot, and I need to
Yes.
learn how to play. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
It's the same thing with grace, in the sense of emotionality and awareness of oneself. as
Yes.
as we come back to that, like that awareness of oneself and our tendencies, that the our current worldly experience is going to pull us one way or another depending on the environment that you're in. However, you can learn to mitigate that through that practice of grace, by learning to
Yes.
do differently into what you and like choose differently, like not just learn to do differently, but choose to do differently, because we do have that choice. As we talked about, our consciousness is different than that of other creatures, and that's special. That means something.
Yes. So Trent, unfortunately, we're going to run out of time again, and we didn't get to some of the topics that we want to cover, but that's why we're doing more episodes, because we never run out of
That
things to
seems
talk
like
about.
every time for us. We always
I know, right?
we have a certain format, and then we start going down these little rabbit holes, and
Yes. Yeah, which is great. I mean, as it should be, right? Following the path.
yes, yes,
But with the limited amount of time that we have left, so I'm going to jump ahead here and recommend earthing to everyone as an
yes.
exercise and a takeaway. And let's get our musical shout outs in. And I have a video shout out too. So
Great.
why don't you go ahead and share your musical shout out and I'll do the same.
So the artist Mateo, Matteao, Mateo, No, sorry, Matteo. Um, he's just a great. He kind of blends jazz with a little bit of hip hop. He's fantastic. Love him. Was recommended him recently actually by a coworker of mine who's very much on the level. Um, so yeah, check
Excellent.
him out.
All right, cool. And then similar to not quite following our agenda, I had a musical shout out that I was going to share today. And in fact, I'm going to share, I changed it in real time here based on our
Nice.
conversation. So I'm going to share two things. I'm going to share music and video. The music is there's a song called The Trees by Rush, released maybe late 70s. It's experimental progressive rock, but one of the opening lyric is there is unrest in the forest, there is trouble with the trees, for the maples want their sunlight and the oaks ignore their pleas. And that's very
Oh,
much very relevant to today's conversation that
yes,
we all
yes,
exist in a place and time and we all have a different level of awareness. And so it's a funny, the lyric is brilliant. It's a funny exploration of humanity using the metaphor of the trees having conflict in the forest.
yes.
The other
Well,
thing
and I,
that I'll share is
go
there's
ahead.
a video called The Secret Language of Trees. If you haven't seen it, check it out because it's phenomenal. And it's all about how trees are actually communicating through a network of roots in the forest. And so,
Yes,
and they come to each
yes.
other's aid.
Mm-hmm.
They
They
release
transfer
hormones into the
nutrients.
soil.
Yes,
Yes,
transfer nutrients back and forth to one another.
yes.
It's pretty
Nutrients and
incredible.
hormones, and they make sacrifices for one another.
Yes,
It's phenomenal.
it is.
So we've got
And
about
to that point,
30 seconds. Any any closing words?
very last thing, everybody, what I'd like everyone to do is calendar some time, like literally make the time. We always say that we don't have time, but make time. Take your shoes off, go out, put your feet on the earth, and give yourself a few minutes.
Cork cleans the edge. Fog turns trees to